Good morning. My name is Onepeg MG, and this is another rudimentary Tarkov economic update. So, some things have changed in the flea market, and some new concerns have arisen. And there have been some interesting trends that I have noticed that, upon thinking of them, seems like it's starting to kind of make sense. In my last video, I talked about how the eye case was going up in price. And while it is, I guess it wasn't necessarily a very good example, as it was brought to my attention, of how the market is pretty horribly manipulable. However, it is still going up. What was originally about 11,000 euros is now 18,000. That is a considerable increase. Pardon me. We're seeing this trend ever upward. However, the items cases are not selling out anymore, which is good. Also, I've noticed that the money cases are no longer selling out because they've added mechanics to where there are maximum purchases for this 3-hour restock timer. If you notice, item is purchased in quantities of 0 pieces, max 1, limited for your 1 restock. So they're doing this now. We knew that they were doing this with ammo. Now they're doing it with certain items that you can purchase from Therapist and Ragman. So we have an eye case limit of 1. We have a Kiba key limit of 1. Any of the items that seem like they were very, very volumized and flipped an awful lot are now being significantly modified in terms of how many you can buy. So this seems like it's now Battlestate's, I guess, Band-Aid fix for this. The other thing that is now having quantity limits associated with it per 3-hour restock is the Gen 4 Assault, the Gen 4 HMK, and the full-size Gen 4 Armor, which unfortunately in this case I don't have Ragman level 4. Onepeg, get off your ass and do some leveling. Anyway. So, my thoughts on this, okay? The price of these items is still going to continue to go up. It will. And the reason why it's going to is because if there's 1,000 items restocked, that means that you only need 500 players, of which I would argue Battlestate and Tarkov has more than 500 players, and will at some point have a volume of at least 500 players that are going to be buying this stuff out. As the player base ages, consumable items like Gen 4 armors and ammunition, obviously we know this, especially for the MP7, and I would say the 308 rounds are probably going to be, like the M61, right, is probably going to be gone faster over time. As long as they have these purchase limits in place, it's going to last a little bit longer, but they're still going to get sold out. A lot of them are going to get used. And for people that have the cash, 2 pieces of armor, 2 pieces of Gen 4 armor, maybe, okay, so you have 6 every 3 hours. That's still nowhere near enough for people that would play over a 3-hour period, especially if they're playing aggressively, right? Because we know from watching our favorite streamers out there that the time associated with dying in this game doesn't take very long. You can get into a raid and be dead after 6 or 7 minutes. And these prices are going to continue to go up because consumable items that are lost relatively readily, with people going back and wanting to buy more, are going to have constant cycles through the flea market. It's just going to happen, right? I'm going to go into 6 raids. If I die 6 times, which people go on 6 loss streaks all the time, right? Sorry about my cell phone. You're going to see that happen. People are going to die way faster than 6 pieces of Gen 4 armor over a 3-hour period. Sure, you can barter for it, and you can go and farm 310 and get the stuff that you would need to buy more, etc., 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 right? We know that you can do that. Or you can go to the market and buy it. I would argue that the majority of players, rather than running up to the 310 room to try and farm out the clocks necessary English to buy a full-size Gen 4 armor, would be a lot less likely for someone to do than to just part with the cash as long as they have it. or they'll farm up other items while they rush through 310 and sell those on the flea market in order to be able to buy it. Either way, it's going to push the cost perpetually upward to some high maximum limit that maybe the average player would no longer be willing to pay. However, again, the people that play this game the most are the people that got to those high levels earlier. And they're the people that cycled money through the flea market earlier when it was like the Wild West and you could just flip crazy stuff. You know, guys like Pestily that listed 2,000 morphines the very first night once he got that high on the therapist task list and was selling them for 66K a piece and ended up having 23 million rubles on day 2, right? Guys, maybe not as crazy as Pestily, because Pestily, you're a fucking nut job, dude. I love you, but you're crazy as goddamn, you're nuts. But the people that are ahead of the curve, like I was last week, and probably still am a little bit, even though I'm only level 32, guys like, you know, War Run, Veritas, you know, all of your favorite streamers that really grind this out. You know, Tweak's already reset his account and he's halfway to level 40 again already. I think he's in his 30s now. But you have this situation where you have these people that were ahead of the curve, flipped a ton of money out of the flea market, like myself, and they still have a ton of money. As long as people that play the game a lot have that ton of money, they're the people that are going to cycle through these consumable items the fastest, and they're the people that are going to continue to prop the market up. Because when people have the money, they'll just spend it, right? In a game like this, they're just going to spend it because they're not going to waste their time going on farm runs. And the player base, the economy in this game is not large enough to where it can counteract that type of inadvertent manipulation. It's just not big enough yet. There aren't enough people cycling money through it. So the quickest, easiest answer for this would be to get more players, which we know isn't always that easy. Failing that, there needs to be another type of system. And I have 2 suggestions in order to keep items like this from continuing to inflate, because what this does is it plays against your average gamer. The average player loses out when they don't have a lot of time to play, don't have a lot of time to generate money, and don't have the means to be able to continue to fight this ever ongoing inflationary cost. There is one saving grace in this for certain items that I have noticed. Like if we look at the Karasa, okay? The Karasa is a uniquity, and there's a reason why. The Karasa has gone down in cost. But there's a very simple explanation for this. Scavs wear Karasas, right? And I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to make the assumption that when you sell items to Skier or to Ragman or anyone else, obviously you resell those at a discounted value, right? That's the quick sell. And from what it looks like, it's about 40% less than market value is what you sell the item to those vendors for. So when you sell those items to those vendors at a 40% discount, it's going to suppress the value of the item. Karasas drop off of scavs rather frequently. We can all agree that we've all seen multiple Karasas dropping off of scavs, right? Forts are obviously more rare, but Karasas seem relatively common. You kill scavs, you get your Karasa, you kill another player that's wearing a Karasa. That's probably at this point the most common armor that you would see people wearing. And rather than have it muddle up your inventory or stack up various durabilities and take up all 3 of the average player's sale slots on the flea market, you just sell it back to the vendor at the discount. When you sell it back to the vendor at the discount, it suppresses the value of any future trades that go on, right? Therefore, reducing the cost of the Karasa that is in circulation when you go to buy a new one. Makes sense? Makes sense to me, right? So what's the issue with the rest of this? Okay, so if we go A to B and B to C, in this situation, the reason why Gen 4s and items like the Gen 4, like ammunition for the MP7, more than likely M61 as time goes on, any other item that is consumed, right, loses durability and is consumed rather regularly. And I don't look at guns as a situation like this, although the MP7 is another example of a different economic trend, which I'll get into in a second. I know this is hitting 10 minutes, but stick with me on this, okay? because there will be something here. I know that I'm at 10 minutes, but give me like another 3, okay? The Gen 4 and items like the Gen 4 will perpetually go up in value to some absurdly high price that the general population will not be willing to pay, and it will basically be for the rich boys because it does not drop anywhere. It doesn't. There's no scavs wearing Gen 4s, right? That's why those go up in value. So fix number 1 that I would recommend, rehash the loot tables a little bit. Start having scavs wearing this stuff. Now, I'm going to assume that when we get to Terror Group Labs, you will see the elite quote-unquote scav packs wearing this. If they're not, they should be. Because if they're quote-unquote elite scavs, they should have relatively better gear. And they should be wearing Gen 4s. So when they start getting farmed, you can start cycling the armor through, right? If the armor is getting cycled through vendors because of loss of durability or whatever, and they're not likely to be put on the flea market, then people will resell those items back to the vendors and suppress the cost. So that way your average player has some competitive ability, right? Second, the MP7 has not varied very much in cost. Why is that? Like, if you look, the MP7 is $530. It's been about 500 USD since the trade market went live. Why? Well, it's pretty simple of an answer if you ask me. The value of the rounds for the MP7 continues to go up in cost, right? If the value of the rounds, if the cost of the rounds keep going up in cost and they keep getting relatively sold out to the point where people are like, screw that, I'm not going to buy that, right? If they're not going to buy the ammunition for the gun, then they're not going to use the gun. If they're not using the gun's not in circulation as often. And people that loot the MP7 go, well, shit, I got an MP7. I might as well hold on to it. So they're not cycling it back through the traders because they're not being seen all that often. Yes, players do use them a lot, right? But I would argue that the people that use them are the people with means. They're the people that are paying for them, right? So this brings me to the next point. You have this inadvertent disjointedness or reduction in use of items like the MP7 because the ammunition for it is getting to be so expensive. They'd rather just go use an AK and grab some PP rounds off of Prapper. And you don't see the cost of those items going up. You actually see the cost of those items going down a bit because stuff like AKs are rather common. And the reselling of those to the vendors is, again, suppressing the cost. Now, like I said, I'm making an assumption that selling it to the vendors is having an impact on the sale price. If it doesn't, it should. It really should, because the quick sale for that should be getting taken into account over that 3-hour cycle. Otherwise, the economy in itself, to me, looks like it's like half-baked, right? It's already kind of half-baked in a sense. I like that they're putting limits on the quantization or the number of items that you can buy, but it's a Band-Aid, right? We know it's a Band-Aid. The easiest way to fix this to where you do not need to have these Band-Aids anymore would be a couple of little suggestions, okay? Like give me another minute. I know, 13 and a half minutes. I know, I'm looking. One, put the ability to have those consumable items circulated in the actual raids by having scavs wear them. They already wear forts. What's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, they're already wearing the best possible body armor that you can get in the game once in a great while. So, put another extra % on it or something and have the Gen 4 be a little bit more common, right? Shouldn't be that hard to incorporate that into scav usage. Second, I would also start looking at the ability to allow for some amount of crafting, right? I know that Bitcoin farming, with GPUs, to where you can do hashing and get that in your hideout, and I know that they're going to at some level include that. I would also say something along the lines of being able to create ammunition. If that's not on the timeline, I don't know if that was or not. Being able to create ammunition, and then I would even take it a step further and maybe even incorporate the ability to find like broken stuff. Okay, like you find a busted M4 receiver that needs to be fixed, or you find a busted MP7 receiver or whatever that needs to be fixed, and you can use a toolkit and maybe apply that toolkit to the item. Give it a timer, right? Say like, all right, I'm going to fix this thing. Give it a timer and have it take some durability loss, right? Like it's a rudimentary, MP7 that's subject to the possibility of jamming, at 5% more likely than, the other guns that you could get that are brand new, right? Like real world-ish scenario. You got some dirt in the receiver. It might not fire, 100% of the time. Maybe it's 95% or something. Have it take a little bit of a durability hit. It's at 75% instead of 100. But have it workable, right? Then you can list that same MP7 with the hit on durability, or the same M4 with the hit on durability in the market, right? If you give people the ability to be able to quote unquote craft stuff or fix things that they find, it does two things. One, it makes toolkits viable other than a barter item for the foreseeable future, so you have more people looking for wrenches and screwdrivers and that kind of stuff, and it gives it a little bit more meaning, right? I know that we have yellow pliers on trade and we can get a 133 shotgun and all that stuff, but I look at it like if you have the ability to repair items, if you have the ability to fix up stuff, then you can put that on the flea market, and now you have competitiveness, right? You can cycle ammunition that you make yourself through the flea market and suppress, right? Be able to counteract the vendor-only purchases by doing stuff like that, right? I think that would be a huge game saver, actually, at least in economic terms. Historically, what we see in other games like this that have these kind of robust economies, like you're comparing it to EVE Online, right? But in EVE Online, at the very least, you can take a little bitty baby bullshit ship and you can fly up to an asteroid and you can mine it, right? You start off with the ability to mine asteroids no matter what. We all know that you can. But there's no mining system really in Tarkov. Yeah, you can find barter items and you can go to traders and you can do that. But if the items to be able to trade for the stuff that people really, really want, like Gen 4 armor, takes someone going, screw it, I'm not going to bother with a kit and I'm just going to run through the map with a hatchet. Now you've created a system that actually promotes hatchet running so that you can farm up barter items so that you can list a Gen 4 at an increased cost and reap the reward of selling that, and then just go buy a rudimentary kit or 2 or 3 and do that instead, right? If we have this stuff in actual circulation inside of the raid, then it takes all of that off the table and it promotes, in my opinion, an economy that works better, right? So that would be my suggestion. Revamp the loot table so that scavs actually wear some of this stuff that's a little bit more rare and is consumable. The second would be give people the ability at some point in the future, the ability to craft certain things. Ammunition, fixing up guns, being able to work on that type of stuff where rather than being a consumer only of the economy or a scavenger only, you have the ability to become someone that adds to the loot pool by manufacture, right? And I think that would add a whole new element to the economy that would fix the worry over having to continuously cycle items through the flea market by buy and sell, and having to put trade limits on, stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I got. All right. I'm at 19 minutes. I'm really sorry, guys. I know I was trying not to make this like a long thing, but as I'm like thinking through this in my own head, it just, it warranted a little bit more explanation. I have a Twitter, right? Like up over there, right up there. So go to Twitter and say hi to me, Onepeg MG, right? Come check me out on Twitch. I stream almost every single day. Blah blah blah. Like, subscribe. Pretend I just said all the shit that I'm supposed to say about liking and subscribing and commenting and whatever. All right, I'm out. I will talk to you guys in another couple of days as I continue following this market shit. All right, love you guys. Later.